At 6:47 a.m. on a Friday morning, I discovered the code error that would cost my company $3 billion before the market closed. I ran to my manager's office at 7:15 a.m. with proof, with documentation, with every piece of evidence showing that our new trading algorithm was about to catastrophically fail. He laughed at me. Actually, laughed. "Maya, you're always seeing ghosts in the numbers. The tech team tested this for months. Stop being so paranoid." By 4 p.m. that day, when the closing bell rang and the full scope of the disaster became clear, the board had already learned my name, read my warning email, and understood exactly who had tried to save them. My name is Maya Chen, and I spent 8 years as Director of Risk Analysis at Quantum Capital Management in New York, building systems designed to catch disasters before they happened. That Friday, I caught one. I screamed about it, and I was dismissed like background noise by a man who thought confidence was the same as competence. By the time the market closed, he was unemployed. I was sitting in an emergency board meeting, and $3 billion had evaporated in 6.5 hours of algorithmic chaos that I had predicted down to the minute. Before I take you through that day, that brutal Friday that changed everything, I need you to understand something. This isn't about being right. It's about what happens when the people paid to listen stop listening, when warnings become noise, when expertise gets dismissed as anxiety. If you've ever tried to stop a disaster and been waved away, if you've ever watched something you predicted unfold exactly as you said it would, you're going to feel every second of this story. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens in the next few minutes is intense, it's devastating, and it shows you exactly why some voices should never be ignored. Now, let's go back to that morning, to the moment I found the error that should have stopped everything. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. like I did most mornings, my apartment in the financial district still dark, the city outside just beginning to stir. I made coffee and opened my laptop at the kitchen table, starting my daily pre-market review routine. Quantum Capital Management was a mid-sized quantitative hedge fund managing approximately $18 billion in assets. We specialized in algorithmic trading strategies, using complex mathematical models to execute thousands of trades per second across global markets. I was 34 years old, Director of Risk Analysis, and my job was essentially to be the pessimist in a room full of optimists. While traders and developers built systems to make money, I built systems to make sure we didn't lose it catastrophically. I monitored positions, stress-tested models, identified vulnerabilities, and most importantly, I questioned everything. That Friday morning, I was reviewing the parameters for a new trading algorithm called Prometheus that was scheduled to go live at market open. Prometheus was our CEO's pet project, 18 months in development, designed to execute high-frequency arbitrage trades across multiple exchanges simultaneously. The promised returns were spectacular. The complexity was extreme. My team had been reviewing Prometheus for 3 weeks, and I'd raised concerns throughout, but I'd been overruled at every stage. The development team, led by our CTO, insisted everything was tested, verified, bulletproof. My manager, Brad Sutton, head of trading operations, had signed off on the launch, but at 6:47 a.m., scrolling through the risk parameters one final time, I saw it. A single line of code in the stop-loss logic that made my blood run cold. The algorithm was designed with automatic stop-losses to limit exposure if positions moved against us. Standard practice, but the threshold values were inverted. Instead of selling when losses reached 2%, the code would increase position size by 200%, and instead of cutting losses at 5%, it would triple down. It was a cascading amplification error. In a declining market, Prometheus wouldn't protect us. It would accelerate our losses exponentially until either the market reversed or we ran out of capital. I grabbed my phone and called Raj Kumar, my lead risk analyst. He answered groggily, "Maya, it's not even 7. Raj, I need you to verify something. Pull up the Prometheus stop-loss parameters. Line 3, 847 in the risk module." I heard him moving, laptop opening. "Okay, pulling it up now. Look at the threshold comparison operators." Silence. Then, "Oh my God, these are backwards." That's what I thought. If the market drops and we start losing money, the algorithm will increase exposure instead of reducing it. Maya, this could wipe out billions. I know. I'm heading to the office now. Call the rest of the risk team. We need to kill the launch. I threw on clothes and was in an Uber by 7:05 a.m., racing through the early morning streets toward our office in Midtown. I tried calling Brad Sutton, straight to voicemail. I tried the CTO, Dennis Park, No answer. I arrived at the office at 7:13 a.m., practically running to the elevator. The trading floor was mostly empty. Just a few early arrivals preparing for the market open at 9:30. Brad's office was on the executive level. I took the stairs two at a time and found him at his desk, reviewing overnight market data, coffee in hand, completely calm. "Brad, we have a critical problem with Prometheus." He looked up, annoyed. "Maya, I'm busy." "The stop-loss logic is inverted. If we launch this algorithm and the market drops, it will amplify our losses instead of limiting them." He set down his coffee. "The system has been tested for 18 months. The testing missed this. I just found it this morning. Look." I pulled up the code on my phone, showing him the error. Line 3, 847. The comparison operators are backwards. Brad barely glanced at it. "Maya, Dennis's team has been through this code line by line, multiple times." Then they missed something critical. "We cannot launch this algorithm today. We're launching at market open. The CEO approved it. The board knows about it. We've already communicated to clients that we're deploying new high-frequency strategies. We're not pulling back now because you think you found a typo. It's not a typo. It's a fundamental logic error that will cost us billions if we're wrong." Brad stood up, his voice rising. "You know what your problem is, Maya. You're always seeing disasters that don't exist. Every strategy we launch, you find some reason it's going to fail. You're the reason we're 6 months behind on 3 other projects because you've slowed them down with endless testing. I've slowed them down because they weren't ready. And they're not failures because we caught the problems." "This conversation is over. Prometheus launches at 9:30. If you can't support that, maybe you need to reconsider whether risk analysis is the right field for you." I stared at him, feeling the familiar burn of being dismissed by someone who wouldn't know a risk model if it bankrupted him. "Brad, if I'm right, you're not. Go do your job and stop trying to do everyone else's." I walked out of his office at 7:22 a.m., hands shaking with frustration and fear. The market opened in 2 hours and 8 minutes. I had to find another way. Back at my desk, I opened my email and started typing. Subject line: "Urgent. Critical error in Prometheus algorithm. Launch must be delayed." I detailed everything. The specific code error, the potential consequences, the projected loss scenarios if the market moved against us. I attached screenshots, risk calculations, and a formal recommendation to suspend the launch pending immediate code review. I addressed it to Brad, Dennis Park, the CTO, and copied the entire risk management team. I hit send at 7:45 a.m. Then I waited and waited. No response. I checked my phone. Nothing. At 8:15 a.m., Raj came to my desk. "Maya, I've been trying to reach Dennis and Brad. Neither is answering. I think they're in the executive strategy meeting." "Of course they are." "The weekly strategy meeting. 2 hours where senior leadership locked themselves in a conference room and ignored everything else." I tried calling Brad again. Voicemail. Dennis. Voicemail. At 8:30 a.m., I made a decision that would either save my career or end it. I opened my email again and pulled up my contact list. 2 names, Catherine Walsh and Harold Brightman, independent members of Quantum's board of directors. I'd worked with both of them on risk assessment presentations over the years. They knew me. They knew my work. I started a new email. Subject: Emergency Risk Alert. Immediate board attention required. I explained everything concisely: the algorithm, the error, my attempts to alert management, the timeline, the potential catastrophic consequences. I attached all my documentation. At 8:34 a.m., I hit send to both board members. Then I sat back, knowing I'd just gone around my manager, around the executive team, straight to the board. If I was wrong, my career at Quantum was over. If I was right and they still ignored me, my career in finance might be over. But I couldn't sit silent and watch what I knew was coming. If you've ever had to break the chain of command because the people above you weren't listening, If you've ever risked everything to do what you knew was right, drop the word warned in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because what happens next moves fast and it's absolutely brutal. At 9:30 a.m., the opening bell rang. I was sitting at my desk, 6 monitors displaying real-time market data, position tracking, and the Prometheus algorithm status dashboard. Around me, the trading floor was alive with energy, traders at their stations, analysts monitoring feeds, the usual controlled chaos of market open. On my center screen, I watched Prometheus activate. Green indicators across the board. The algorithm began executing its first trades, small positions, testing the waters. Everything looked normal. Raj leaned over from the desk next to mine. "It's running clean so far." "Give it time," I said quietly. For the first 15 minutes, Prometheus performed exactly as designed. Quick arbitrage trades across multiple exchanges, small profits accumulating. I watched the P&L dashboard show green numbers climbing steadily. Brad walked past my desk at 9:47 a.m., coffee in hand, smiling. "See, Maya? Everything's fine. Maybe trust the experts next time." He kept walking. I didn't respond. I just watched my screens. At 9:51 a.m., a tech stock experienced a sudden 3% drop triggered by an unexpected earnings miss. Normal market movement. Happens dozens of times a day. Prometheus, holding positions in that stock, should have triggered stop losses. Selling at a small loss. Moving on. Instead, I watched the algorithm do exactly what I'd predicted. It doubled the position size. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The stock continued dropping, now down 4%. Prometheus tripled the position. "Raj," I said, my voice tight. "It's happening." He looked at his screen, and his face went pale. "Oh, God!" The algorithm was now holding massive positions in a stock that was in free fall, and instead of protecting us, it was buying more. I grabbed my phone and called Brad. Straight to voicemail. I called Dennis. No answer. At 9:58 a.m., the losses hit $50 million by 10:05 a.m., $150 million. Other traders were starting to notice. I heard someone across the floor shout, "What's Prometheus doing? Why are we increasing exposure?" I ran to the main trading desk. "We need to shut down Prometheus, now." The head trader, Marco Reyes, looked at his screens in confusion. "I don't have override authority. That's a Brad-level decision." "Where is Brad?" "Still in the strategy meeting." "Then someone needs to go get him." Marco picked up the phone, calling the executive floor. I could hear the urgency in his voice. "I need Brad Sutton immediately. We have a situation." At 10:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email from Catherine Walsh, the board member. "Maya, just read your email. Calling emergency session now. Where is this error manifesting?" I typed back with shaking hands. "Happening now. Losses accelerating. Need immediate shutdown authority." At 10:15 a.m., the losses passed $300 million. The algorithm had now spread to other positions, the same inverted logic playing out across multiple stocks and sectors. Every downtick triggered more buying. Every loss triggered more exposure. Brad finally burst onto the trading floor at 10:18 a.m., his face red. "What the hell is going on?" "Exactly what I told you would happen," I shouted across the floor. "The stop losses are inverted. Shut it down." "We can't just shut down a live algorithm." "Brad, we've lost $350 million in 20 minutes. Shut it down." Dennis Park appeared, laptop in hand, frantically typing. "I'm trying to access the kill switch, but the algorithm has fail-safes against manual interruption. It's designed to prevent manipulation." "Then override the fail-safes." "I'm trying. It's going to take time." At 10:30 a.m., my desk phone rang. I grabbed it. "Maya Chen." "Ms. Chen, this is Catherine Walsh. I'm here with Harold Brightman, and we've just briefed the CEO. We're initiating emergency protocols. Do you have recommendations? Hard shutdown of all systems. Disconnect from exchanges if necessary. The algorithm will not stop on its own. Understood. I'm patching you through to the CEO now. The line clicked. Our CEO, Richard Delacroix, came on. Ms. Chen, explain what's happening in 30 seconds or less. The Prometheus algorithm has inverted stop-loss logic. Every time we lose money, it increases our positions instead of reducing them. The longer it runs, the more we lose. We need a complete system shutdown immediately. Dennis says that will take at least an hour to do safely. Then do it unsafely. Every minute costs us millions. At 10:45 a.m., the losses hit $500 million. Market analysts were starting to notice unusual trading patterns. Financial news networks were reporting erratic movements in multiple securities. Regulators called at 11:00 a.m. The SEC wanted explanations for our trading activity. I could hear Richard on the phone in his office, his voice strained, trying to explain a situation that had spiraled completely out of control. At 11:32 a.m., we lost $700 million. Some of our positions had moved so far against us that unwinding them would create additional market disruptions. Dennis and his team were literally pulling servers out of racks, trying to force the shutdown that the algorithm's own protections were preventing. The trading floor had gone from controlled chaos to pure panic. People shouting, phones ringing nonstop. The P&L dashboard showing red numbers that kept getting bigger. At 11:58 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Catherine Walsh. Maya, the board is convening emergency session at 2 p.m. You need to be there. Bring everything you sent me this morning. We're at $800 million in losses. Her voice was grim. I know. We're watching it in real time. Just be ready at 2 p.m. By 12:30 p.m., the losses exceeded $1 billion. The markets were starting to react to our positions. Other algorithms were detecting our distress and trading against us, amplifying the damage. Lunch hour passed like a nightmare. I sat at my desk, watching number after number turn red, feeling sick to my stomach. This was exactly what I'd predicted. Exactly what I'd tried to prevent. And everyone had dismissed it as paranoia. At 1:15 p.m., Dennis finally succeeded in forcing a complete system shutdown. He literally cut power to the server racks running Prometheus. The algorithm went dark, but the damage was done. Final tallies started coming in. $3 billion in losses, in less than 4 hours. The trading floor was silent now, people staring at screens in shock. Someone was crying quietly at a desk across the room. Brad walked past me without making eye contact. At 1:45 p.m., I gathered my laptop, my documentation, and took the elevator to the executive floor for the emergency board meeting. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I just felt numb. Okay, we're at the final act. Everything is about to shift permanently. If you're still with me, if you need to see how this ends and what happens to everyone involved, make sure you're subscribed. The ending is going to show you exactly why some warnings should never be ignored. Let's finish this. The boardroom was on the 42nd floor, glass walls overlooking Manhattan, normally reserved for quarterly meetings and major presentations. When I walked in at 1:58 p.m., the room was already full. The entire board of directors, 9 people, Catherine Walsh and Harold Brightman, who I'd emailed, 7 others I'd only seen in company materials. Richard Delacroix, our CEO, looking like he'd aged 10 years since morning. Dennis Park, our CTO, pale and sweating. And Brad Sutton, my manager, sitting at the far end of the table with his arms crossed. Catherine gestured to an empty seat. Ms. Chen, please sit. I sat, connecting my laptop to the presentation system. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. Thank you for seeing me. Harold Brightman leaned forward. Ms. Chen, we've been monitoring the situation since you emailed us at 8:34 this morning. Before we hear from anyone else, we want to hear from you. Walk us through what happened. I pulled up my presentation. At 6:47 a.m., I discovered a critical error in the Prometheus algorithm's stop-loss logic. I showed them the code, the specific lines, the inverted comparison operators. This error meant that instead of limiting losses, the algorithm would amplify them exponentially. At 7:15 a.m., I brought this to Brad Sutton's attention. He dismissed my concerns, stating that the system had been tested and was approved for launch. I pulled up the timeline. At 7:45 a.m., I sent a formal warning email to Mr. Sutton, Dennis Park, and the risk management team. I received no response. At 8:34 a.m., with market open approaching and no response from management, I made the decision to email you directly. I looked at Catherine and Harold. Because I believed this represented an existential threat to the company, and standard channels had failed. I advanced to the next slide. At 9:30 a.m., the market opened. Prometheus activated. At 9:51 a.m., the algorithm encountered its first loss scenario. Exactly as I predicted, it increased position size instead of reducing it. By 10:15 a.m., we had lost $300 million. By noon, we exceeded $1 billion. Final losses, $1, $3 billion. The room was absolutely silent. Several board members were taking notes. Others were staring at the screen showing my timestamp documentation. One of the board members I didn't know, an older woman named Patricia Morgan, spoke up. "Mr. Sutton, is this timeline accurate? Did Ms. Chen alert you to this problem at 7:15 this morning?" Brad shifted uncomfortably. She raised concerns, yes. But she raises concerns about everything. The algorithm had been tested by our technical team. "Answer the question," Patricia said sharply. "Did she specifically tell you about the stop-loss error? She showed me some code, but yes or no?" "Yes." Patricia turned to Dennis Park. "And you, Mr. Park. Did you receive her email at 7:45 a.m.? Dennis nodded slowly. "Yes, but I was in a meeting and didn't read it until after the market opened." "So the director of risk analysis sent a formal warning email about a critical system error, and you didn't read it?" Patricia's voice was ice. "What exactly do you think risk analysis is for?" Richard Delacroix, the CEO, cleared his throat. "The failure here is communication and response protocols. We clearly need to—" "The failure here," Catherine Walsh interrupted, "is leadership. Ms. Chen identified a catastrophic error, followed proper reporting procedures, and was dismissed by her manager. She then went around her manager to alert the board directly, which is the only reason we understood what was happening in real time. Without her email, we would have been blindsided by a $1 billion loss with no context." Harold Brightman pulled up his tablet. "I'm looking at Ms. Chen's personnel file. Her risk assessments over the past 3 years have identified 17 potential issues. How many of those issues, if left unaddressed, would have caused significant losses?" Richard looked at Dennis, who pulled up records. 14 of them were verified as legitimate concerns. We implemented fixes before any losses occurred. "So she has an 82% accuracy rate on risk identification," Harold said. "And when she brings you the 18th concern, your response is to laugh at her and tell her she's paranoid." Brad's face flushed red. "I made a judgment call based on what? Your ego? Your timeline pressure? Because it certainly wasn't based on her track record or expertise." Catherine turned to me. "Ms. Chen, why did you email the board directly instead of escalating through other channels?" "Because there were no other channels," I said. My manager dismissed me. The CTO wasn't available. We were 90 minutes from market open, and I knew what was coming. I made the decision that alerting the board directly was the only way to protect the company, even if it meant violating chain of command. "That took courage," Harold said. "And the fact that you were willing to risk your position to protect the company tells us everything we need to know about your priorities." Patricia Morgan spoke again. I'm calling for immediate action. Mr. Sutton and Mr. Park, you're both suspended pending a full investigation into the Prometheus launch and your response to Ms. Chen's warnings. If the investigation confirms what we've heard today, your employment will be terminated. Brad started to protest, but Richard held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. Patricia turned to me. Ms. Chen, we'd like to offer you a new position, Chief Risk Officer reporting directly to this board. You'll have authority over all risk management operations, including veto power over any trading system launch, effective immediately. I felt like the room was spinning. Yes, I accept. Good. Your first assignment is to lead a comprehensive review of all our algorithmic trading systems. If you find anything else that concerns you, you come directly to us. No intermediaries. Understood? Understood. The meeting continued for another hour, but the major decisions had been made. Brad and Dennis were escorted out by security. I stayed, answering detailed questions about risk management protocols and what changes we needed to implement. By the time I left the boardroom at 4:30 p.m., the market had closed, the damage was final, and my entire career had shifted in a direction I never expected. Over the next week, the investigation confirmed everything. Brad had dismissed multiple warnings. Dennis had prioritized timeline over safety. The Prometheus launch had been rushed to meet an arbitrary deadline set by executives who didn't understand the technology. Brad was terminated. Dennis resigned before he could be fired. Richard Delacroix survived, but was placed on a performance improvement plan by the board, and I became the youngest chief risk officer in Quantum's history. My first act was implementing a mandatory escalation protocol. Any risk analyst could trigger an emergency board notification if they believed management was ignoring a critical concern. No retaliation, no approval needed. Direct access. 3 months later, one of my analysts used that protocol to flag a potential compliance violation in our European operations. We caught it before regulators did, fixed it proactively, and avoided what would have been a $200 million penalty. The system worked, because people were finally listening. 6 months after that Friday, I was invited to speak at a financial industry conference about risk management. During my presentation, I told the story of Prometheus, the error, the dismissal, the disaster, and what we'd learned. The lesson isn't about algorithms or code, I told the audience. It's about culture, about whether your organization actually wants to hear bad news, or whether it just wants to hear confirmation of what it's already decided. Because the experts you hire to find problems are worthless if you don't listen when they find them. After the presentation, a young woman approached me. Ms. Chen, I'm a risk analyst at another firm. I've been raising concerns about one of our strategies, and my manager keeps dismissing me. What should I do? I gave her my business card. Document everything. Follow your escalation procedures. And if those fail, find someone who will listen. Because your job isn't to make people comfortable. It's to keep them safe. Even from themselves. That night, flying back to New York, I thought about that Friday morning. About finding the error at 6:47 a.m. About Brad's laughter. About watching Bjorn $3 billion evaporate in real time while everyone realized I'd been right all along. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sad. Sad that it took a catastrophe for people to listen. Sad that expertise had to be proven with disaster instead of trusted with prevention. But I also felt determined, because now I had the authority to make sure it never happened again. Not on my watch, not to my team. My manager dismissed my warning at 7:15 a.m. By 4 p.m., the board had learned the cost, $1, $3 billion in losses, and 3 careers destroyed. And the person who'd been laughed at that morning was now the chief risk officer with the power to stop anyone who tried to ignore the warnings again. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever raised a concern and been dismissed? Have you watched something you predicted unfold exactly as you said it would? What happened next? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this showed you that expertise matters, that warnings should be heard, and that sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to do the right thing, subscribe to this channel. We're telling stories about people who refused to stay silent even when silence was easier. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. And remember, the experts you hire to find problems are only valuable if you listen when they find them. Otherwise, you're just paying for validation you don't deserve. I'll see you in the next one.